Thank you, everyone, and welcome. I'm very happy to welcome you all, and thank you for joining us. Greetings from Costa Rica, where we are at the Earth Charter International Secretariat in our Education Center, or the Earth Charter Education Center on Education for Sustainable Development that is located here on the campus of the University for Peace. Today we are celebrating 23 years since the launch of the Earth Charter. We chose the theme of today for our dialogue to have a dialogue around planetary well-being and ecological civilizations. What are these emerging efforts? And it's basically to help us spark our minds and our creativity to envision ecological civilizations. I first want to acknowledge that this webinar is organized with the support of SGI, Sokokai International, and the Club of Rome, also Okayama University, and obviously the University for Peace, with whom we have been collaborating for many years. SGI has been partnering with the Earth Charter International for more than 2 decades in many different ways, including at the launch of the Earth Charter that was held at the Peace Palace in The Hague, Netherlands, 23 years ago. I want to also thank, because over the last 2 decades, we have had several people that have been involved in the Earth Charter movement, many that have stayed for over 2 decades, because the whole idea of the Earth Charter obviously started before the Earth Summit in '92. So many people have stayed engaged and involved. But we have a small team here in Costa Rica, our staff, Alicia Jimenez, Amanda Bennett, Maria Sosa, and Charlene Zamora, who have been dedicating their life for work, for their work with the Earth Charter. But we also receive the support of many people around us from the University for Peace. And over the last years, of course, we have received a lot of support from the Earth Charter International Council members, including Atsufumi Yokoi, who's based in Japan, and Michael Bracken, Song Lee, Paul Lubers, Akpezi, Jane, Rick Clugston. These are council members from the Earth Charter International that have been really working very closely with us over the years, including also a number of special advisors. As you know, the Earth Charter is a document that was launched 23 years ago, but it also involves a global movement. We have Earth Charter affiliates in different parts of the world. We have over 100 affiliates in over 90 countries. And I also want to acknowledge the work of a number of Earth Charter young leaders that are actually doing a lot of important work also. Now, I wrote a brief reflection on what happened on that day of the launch of the Earth Charter, and we published it in our website. And the main idea of writing that was to invite us to think of the original purpose of drafting the Earth Charter and launching. But I do remember that in 29th of June, year 2000, once we launched it, the whole idea was to translate the Earth Charter in different languages, disseminate, and make it be used as an instrument of education, an instrument to further stimulate dialogue on global values or global ethics, or what could be that ethical foundations that could guide humanity towards a more just, sustainable, and peaceful world. Now, there is something special that is happening today, is that we are launching an Earth Charter, the first edition of the Earth Charter magazine. I'm going to ask our friends to share here the link of the Earth Charter magazine that we are launching. It's obviously a collective effort. We had 3 people working on it in the thinking, editing, and designing: Maria Sosa, Lindsay Bakuri, and myself. And we had the contribution of several individuals from different parts of the world. So thank you so much for all your help So today we are initiating actually a conversation around ecological civilization, and we are actually heading towards what we are thinking of organizing a conference in April 2024 in Florida. And the theme of the conference is reimagining education towards ecological civilizations. So I hope with our conversation today, it's going to spark a lot of thoughts and insights for all of us. I would like now to hand over now to our moderator, John Anderson, and at the same time express my gratitude for John for all these years of collaboration and friendship. John, the floor is yours.
Thank you so very much, Miriam. And really, I want to pay huge tribute to you and all your small but amazing team in Costa Rica for the incredible work you've done. And it's been a huge honor for me to be part of this Earth Charter movement now for over 20 years. And I was very fortunate to be at the launch, and there was a great sense of excitement. And I think what's so wonderful about the Earth Charter is that every time I read it, every time I come back to it, that sense of excitement returns. And I think there's something about the Earth Charter having come out of this incredible process of grassroots discussion involving so many different cultures and so many different worldviews, faiths, indigenous perspectives, that means it touches us on such a deep level. And yeah, I'm really happy to be able to join. And I think, as we're saying, this is a very critical, as we know, the Earth Charter opens with, we stand at a critical moment in Earth's history, a time when humanity must choose its future. But this time, again, is very critical. It's, as we know, the halfway point towards the implementation of the SDGs, leading up to 2030. And it's also a time when we've just emerged from a pandemic, which has caused, huge distress in many ways. But I think this moment of, we are reconnecting, we're re-emerging. And I think that gives us a fresh opportunity to really re-examine what that interconnection means. And the Earth Charter is such a wonderful expression of that. So I would like to begin and just say that I feel it's very appropriate also that we're holding this in the Asian time frame. We have participants from different countries in Asia, and we also have, of course, people from Australia and maybe New Zealand and the Pacific as well, I hope. And I think there's a particular resonance of the Earth Charter with the traditional philosophies of Asia in terms of interconnection and what we call in Buddhism dependent origination. We cannot exist without each other. And so I think this is a very timely moment, and I hope we may have a speaker joining us from China who would be perhaps able to particularly talk about the emerging idea of ecological civilization, which has been very much promoted there as a future vision. So first, I would like to bring in Kazuo Takahashi, who is a well-known scholar and expert in the Earth Charter. He's been involved in an Earth Charter group in Japan that has just published a book, actually, with many expert perspectives. And he's a former official of OECD and advisor of the Library of Alexandria, and also formerly professor of the International Christian University here in Tokyo. So Kazuo, please give us your thoughts perhaps on the first question we're addressing, which is, what do we mean by ecological civilization? Thank you. I think you're on mute, sorry.
Sorry about that. Thank you, John. Can you hear me? Okay. Actually, ecological civilizations can mean many, many things. However, for the Earth Charter community, it should be very clear. It is the vision as presented in the Charter. Namely, the whole purpose of civilization is a cardinal value of the respect of life. And in order to pursue that, three major pillars around which civilization has to be constructed. The three major pillars are, number one, ecological integrity. Number two, social and economic justice. Number three, peace and democracy. All of these three pillars have to be put together to pursue the major objective of an emerging global civilization, which would be our vision of the ecological civilization. Thank you, John.
Thank you so very much. I think we have another speaker. Is that right? Did Song Lee just mention that she could speak? She's in China. I'm not sure.
No, she's in the US, but she's from China, and she's been writing about, but go ahead.
Okay. So I think, given that we at the moment don't have a speaker actually who's with us from China, I'd like to invite perhaps Olivia. Do you have any thoughts on how you would view ecological civilization, or how you would view where we are at the moment in the world? Olivia has a background in the business sector and has been working to put the SDGs and ESG into practice in the business world, and is now advising institutions on sustainability and the circular economy at Western Sydney University in Australia. Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the question and inviting me to join you. I am joining you today from Sydney, but also would like to acknowledge our traditional owners of the lands in which I am joining you from, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. And I also thank them for their knowledge and wisdom, which I think we can learn so much from, which I think is also enshrined in the Earth Charter in terms of turning our minds and respects to the views and intelligences of our First Nations people around the world. So I think when I think about what we're talking about in terms of ecological civilization and I guess transpose that concept of a more holistic and integrated way of viewing yourself in the world and the way you interact with the world around you. If I take that to a business context, I think it's really about how you evaluate the role you play as a often for-profit or a profit-generating institution, and how you can use those, I guess, those strengths and that might of economic value to also safeguard and restore or regenerate environmental or social value. And so for me, that really does mean a bit of a mindset shift, I think, in how business sees themselves, but also the opportunity that they present to get us to where we need to be. So that doesn't always mean we're there. I think there's as we would say, a lot of opportunity to improve practices and movements like the B Corp movement, etc., which are, and a lot of the startups and the sort of technology-oriented organisations that are really starting to angle and tackle some of those big climate change challenges, social justice, etc. So I do think there's certainly the buds and emergence of excellence in those areas, but obviously an opportunity to continue. So I think the time we are in now, where we're all seeking, I guess, an inherent and intrinsic purpose and a way of expressing that through our work, both paid and unpaid, I think we have a time where there are kind of, I guess, rivers or threads coming together where we can better remember our place in the world and on the planet, and how we can better use our, I guess, intelligences and our abilities to better safeguard what we see around us.
Thank you so much. Yes, I mean, if we don't involve the business community, certainly we're not going to get very far. So thank you for giving us that perspective. So I believe we're very fortunate that Song Lee is now here with us. So please, Song Lee she's a council member of the Earth Charter and has been a hugely influential figure over the past decades with the Earth Charter movement. And I'd love to hear, Song Lee, if you could give us your perspective on what do we mean by ecological civilization. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, John. And hello, everyone. You know, it is my pleasure and my great honor to be with you. And because my view of the ecological civilization is that this concept, this vision is relatively new. And that gives us, particularly younger people, more room and leeway to contribute to the content of this ecological civilization. You know, I know China recognized this ecological civilization as their national policy. They even incorporated ecological civilization into their constitution. So it is huge. You know, that just to show the willingness of the government. However, how that ecological civilization could become a concrete guidance, what should be the ecological civilization practices, how, you know, each individual, how business, how, you know, educational system should change. So there's still a lot of things we need to contribute and to bring that, you know, this our own contribution. In that perspective, I think the Earth Charter provides the foundation and also provide the guidance in a way to every one of us to contribute, to determine what ecological civilization for the country, for the world, and for our community. So I just see the ecological civilization is just like a framework, which is a good framework. However, that provide huge opportunities to each one of us, to younger people, to make this ecological civilization a practical framework and guide us to the, you know, to the more sustainability and peaceful world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Song Lee. I think that was really helpful for us in terms of seeing that actually we're talking, as also Kazuo was mentioning from the start, we're talking about the same, it's the same vision. And the Earth Charter, we're so fortunate to have the Earth Charter as this accessible, all-in-one document that, as you say, can be used at any level. So I think this is a great moment to bring in Yvonne Gannison, and I'll move on to the next question, and maybe Yvonne can help us answer that. So the question is, what are some of the good practices in the effort of using and implementing the Earth Charter and implementing the SDGs? Particularly, what are some examples of emerging efforts towards planetary well-being and of building ecological civilizations? And I will introduce Yvonne, but before I even do that, I would just like to say that it's her, well, it was her birthday yesterday on June 29th, which is the same day as the birthday of the Earth Charter. So I think this is a very lovely, maybe not coincidence, and just really happy to welcome you here and to introduce Yvonne. She's a designer and entrepreneur, committed to sustainability, and she has been involved with the Earth Charter as a young leader since 2022, and she's based in Malaysia. So I will hand it over to you, Yvonne, to give us some good practices that can inspire us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, everyone, for the birthday wishes. Before I start, I would just like to say my condolences. It is something that I read across an article by Clean Clothes Campaign, and maybe a short time of silence for Carbona after. He's the president of BGIWF, and there's horrific news of his brutal murder of Shahidul Islam, a union leader who was beaten to death for his labor rights activism in Bangladesh. He has always helped workers in need, and he has been in part of peaceful discussions trying to find a resolution to a wage dispute, but unfortunately he met his fate due to an industry promotion of yellow unionism for years and neglect workers' voices. And his contributions to the labor movement were remarkable, and he has helped many people and many factory workers. And it is just very sad news to see one of us who I consider a change maker trying to make a difference was not accepted, and unfortunately lost his life. And so condolences to him and his family. And as for me, hi everyone, I'm Yvonne, I'm from Malaysia. So I'll be speaking mostly based on my experiences as a designer. As a designer learning on sustainability, I started understanding more the social difficulties that we are experiencing in the world right now that are hidden in the eyes of many, because it is not being publicized. Many do not understand, many do not know, many may be ignorant in trying to contribute to that better path that we are all seeking for. And so my part as a designer, and how am I contributing, would be how am I integrating it in the design system, whether it be fashion or whether it be a core value in your business corporation. How are we integrating it? And for instance, as part of me exploring this new idea of wellness fashion, right? And I understand like this whole circular economy that is going on, and how we try to make it into a loop and not create waste, and also how we're taking care of the workers and the supply chains and so on. But one of the reasons why I went into this wellness fashion is that just like how fast food, it might be delicious and it might be, you know, yummy for those, there are certain things that are in the food that is harming people. There are certain things that are in your clothes that are harming us as well. And that was something that I was ignorant to and did not realize, not understand. We are so busy looking how can we take care of the workers and how can we take care of the supply chain, that we forget that the products that we produce can also be harmful for the clients and for the customers. So how can we as designers not only take care of the supply chain, but be careful and conscious on the product that we are putting out there? How is that contributing not the earth, not only social workers that are beneath the tiers, but also those who are using our products? What sort of benefit are they getting out of it? Is it in any way contributing to their wellness, to their health, to their well-being, instead of just producing clothes that are mostly, I mean, we have a problem with consumption. I think we all know that nowadays we buy things without purpose, and we just, the idea is to look good and to, you know, that fashion. Why do we buy clothes? To look attractive. And most of the time we buy clothes not to look attractive for ourselves, but we want other people to look at us as attractive, to be socially included, I guess, in the psychological manner. How do we break free from that? It is, I wouldn't say a struggle, but it is an interesting challenge to take upon on how do we break this old mindsets of people for them to start exploring themselves as an individual, because now they are engineered in a way of how do the world work and how can we adapt to the world so that we do not seem like outsiders. They just want to feel belong. I mean, they want to feel like they're belonging somewhere. But I think we fail to understand that we all have our own strength, we all have our own weaknesses, and it is the strength that complements each other. And working together, I think that is what the Earth Charter stands for. in collaboration. How can we work with each other to accomplish this mission? And it doesn't need to be, you do not need to be a great activist or a great, be someone great. We all have a small part to play, whether it be in a big organization, a resident community, or even in your own homes. How can we start with ourselves? And then let's try to change the outside world, because it needs to start with smaller steps. If we start looking at the bigger picture without changing what is internally, it won't last, because it's not true to yourself and true to your practice. And that means it's unsustainable in the future. So yeah, that would be my take on it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing in such deep questions. I know sometimes people see fashion as something, more to do with the surface, but as you say, there's a search for belonging and a search for meaning that also, of course, exists there. So to bring in some more positive examples, I think I'm going to call on both Kazuo and Olivia. So Olivia, do you want to come in first to pick up on some of these ideas about the circular economy and maybe share some hopeful examples of what you're seeing in Australia?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a good segue from Yvonne's points around design. And, many years ago, we looked around designing for disposal, which was what we did back then, but now it's definitely designing for reuse or repurpose. And there's been a lot of work actually most recently around the Global Circular Economy Forum, which has been, I think, over in Helsinki. And then we had a similar sort of session here in Australia on Monday, actually, of this week. And there's a lot of energy and talk around the practices and principles of circular economy, which is really around rights to repair. So if you're a manufacturer and you're building a product, how do you enable either take back or extend, in some instances, it's an extended producer responsibility for disposal. And there's a lot of legislative frameworks around that, particularly in the EU and the UK looking at that, but also, the right to repair and moving away from replacement instead of, getting parts from somewhere else and being able to substitute that and give more life or secondary life through. We have a lot of examples in Australia where we have different types of social enterprises or charity-based organisations who will take products and then either refurbish them and give them to those who would not necessarily be able to afford them and give them a second life in that way. So I think those sorts of avenues, but also it's actually the thinking. And if you take away sustainability, which can have a polarizing effect sometimes on different people if they're not part of that's their day-to-day vernacular, and we talk about designing for purpose, or we design for cost reduction, or we design for better usability. I think all of those kind of phrases and concepts enable us to land on a much better for the world, better for the user, better experience for the product and the outcomes we're looking. I think the other piece also, and picking up on Yvonne's point around supply chain, we have a Modern Slavery Act in Australia. New Zealand is looking at something similar. There are frameworks that the UK has one as well. And then there's also the EU, and each country is looking at what does this mean, but it's about having and building the capability of your suppliers to better safeguard the human rights practices in their supply chain, which is crucial, but also helping us use that as an economic incentive. If you're a buyer, then you should be buying from an organisation that is better aligned with your intentions. Now, initially, that may see cost rise in that instance when you talk about that exact contract transaction, but actually the cost is less because you're looking at a broader boundary. You're looking at different benefits. You're looking at economic empowerment to groups that may be at a disadvantage. If you're looking at employment outcomes, I think we need to change how we measure cost and how we measure benefit and reward organisations who are doing that through contracts, through better commercial outcomes, and actually, enacting the words we've put in our reports actually through our supply chain by honouring what we've said. So I think there are lots of different approaches that we're certainly seeing in this region. Lots of positives, still a little bit of way to go, I think, in terms of how we actually make the whole system support that, but definitely heading in the right direction.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Olivia. That gives us lots of food for thought, and it's really encouraging to hear how deeply people are taking this at every, as you said, every stage of the supply chain manufacturing process and everything. So now I'd like to bring in Kazuo to give us a few examples from the Japanese context, perhaps, about some efforts towards putting the Earth Charter into practice, putting the SDGs into practice, and building an ecological civilization. Thank you, Kazuo.
Thank you, Jerome. Just about 2 years ago, we thought about how to contribute in a meaningful way, putting together the various activities related to the Earth Charter and an enormous number of activities related to the SDGs. And we decided that perhaps one way would be put together some of these activities into a book, which we did. And we published a book titled Reflecting on the Earth Charter as an Origin of the SDGs. It was in November last year. Some 12 people contributed various chapters to this book, which is about 300 pages. And this book looked into several aspects of this practices. One was related to the origins of the Earth Charter, and it was written by several people, including Madame Hironaka. And the second aspect was related to the initial impact of the Earth Charter, which was related to the Millennium Declaration, and also somewhat later in the negotiating process of the SDGs. And the third aspect is related to the expanding horizons of the activities related to the Earth Charter, which in many ways are related to the implementation of SDGs. It deals with a wide range of activities, including musicals, Olympics and Paralympics, and others. I was amazed with the variety of activities which originates from the Earth Charter. And the third is related to the future of the global community. One is related to more or less political aspects, its relevance to the global governance. And another is related to the longer term perspective, which is related to the emergence of a new global civilization. And these two aspects also were looked into by this book. And perhaps this way of producing a book related to both the Earth Charter and the SDGs would be a good example of our contribution to this exercise. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
By the way, John, just to add
Yeah.
one aspect, as a follow-up to this book, in September this year, we will be organizing a symposium at the campus of Okayama University, where Miriam will also be invited. Thank you.
That's wonderful news. That's very exciting. And thank you so much for introducing that book, which sounds and looks so very comprehensive. So now the next question we're coming on to is about the this issue that you've already touched on, about the relationship between the SDGs and the Earth Charter. And I love the way you put it as the Earth Charter as the origin of the SDGs. And I think the great thing is that the Earth Charter has no time frame on it, and will be with us, from now into the future, whereas the SDGs, as we know, have a limited time frame. So I think the Earth Charter can be a document that we come back to throughout these next 7 years, and of course beyond. We're only beginning. So I'd like to ask now if Miriam would like to comment on, from her perspective, how she sees this relationship between the SDGs and the Earth Charter. Thank you, Miriam.
Thank you, John. It's good to be here and to hear everyone. Well, the Earth Charter was launched in the year 2000. The SDGs in 2015. I think there are two interesting common characteristics of both, which is both frameworks, if we call this way, they are bringing together this whole concern and agenda of environment, social, but now also peace. The whole concern around ensuring long-term peace was normally seen as separate from the agenda of environment until then. But the Earth Charter already saw the linkages of ensuring ecological integrity and social and economic justice as a way to get to the aspiration of more enduring peace. So having this, I think, international communities moving towards this need of a holistic or
I think, is Miriam having a technical issue?
I think so.
Objectives and goals, right? Very, sorry. The SDGs are setting goals and objectives, whereas the Earth Charter offers an ethical foundations, offers an articulation of values and principles that offer some foundations for us to think long-term about the consequences of our actions. And so one difference is one setting objectives and goals, the other one, which is the Earth Charter, articulating more the notion of values and principles that we should be thinking. And I think another big difference would be that the SDGs have a more anthropocentric approach, whereas the Earth Charter
Let's see if she comes back.
with regards to how we ought to relate to one another in the large living. I think I have an internet problem, right? So I will stop here.
You're coming and going, but thank you. What you have said is very, very comprehensive and very, very valuable. Thank you so much. And I'll just mention one thing, that we at SGI collaborated with the Earth Charter to create an app called Mapting, which tried to bring together two frameworks of the SDGs and the Earth Charter as a tool for individuals to kind of map their own activities towards creating this vision of planetary well-being and a world of care, if you like. So now I think it's time to move on to the next question, which brings us to really looking forward. So what are the necessary actions we need to take to significantly accelerate our response to address the pressing challenges and build an ecological civilization or ecological civilizations? How can the Earth Charter be used in the context of a possible planetary system collapse and the possibilities to a great transition towards an ecological civilization? Now, this is a really huge question, and I think it would be great to go first to our most useful participant to just give us, just your thoughts and feelings about what is the most, from your perspective as a young Earth Charter young leader at this point in human history, what do you feel is most important for us to move forward towards this vision that we share? So Yvonne, thank you.
Yes, so based on my experience, from what I'm seeing, we can start by being wise with the messages that we put out. Are the messages we put about the Earth's condition invoke fear, saying the world is going into destruction, this is happening, and so on? Or are we pursuing this message in a way that brings love, in terms of sometimes we provoke fear into someone, and that fear does not make them, or how do I say, encourage them to make a difference, because then the condition or the situation seemed too big for them to make a difference. So if, let's say, I were to see a post on the burning forests that are happening, right? And a part of me, they'll say, stop, the CO2 is rising, this and that. And sometimes it just invokes fear, and then it's like, this is such a big deal, I probably just have to stay silent. Like I wouldn't do anything about it. They just tell me the facts, and that's about it. What are the steps that we can do? How do we integrate a message of fear, and a message of love, including in these messages? And how can we integrate them smartly? Like this, we have to be careful with the messaging that help brings and promote and transform behaviors. We humans relate a lot to genuineness and vulnerability. So let's seek that and be transparent with what is it we as individuals are going through, and what small steps can we take as individuals towards contributing to a solution. Now, words really have the power to bring changes, just like how Earth Charter document is. It is principles that's written in words, and it assists. It's a co-labor in reaching the assignment of the SDG that we have in the SDG agenda. And we just have to, I guess, rethink of how can we infuse that in our marketing, in our brandings, in even our daily posts, whether it be social media, on LinkedIn. How can we infuse our messaging with tough love, a love that speaks up even though it hurts, the situation hurts, but you speak up because you truly care, and fear is not conducive in learning. So we need to find a way to bring messages that invoke a desire in them to change. Martin King Luther started a revolution with, I had a dream. It started with, I had a dream. And that speech revolutionized a change in the nation. And how can we create that same change through words, I guess, in a different way of saying, I have a dream, in a way that might provoke them to start taking action, start making better choices. That would be one. Second, as a designer, be designing, I think Olivia touched on this as well, design with a purpose. One of the reasons why I went away from fashion and moved into education technology before coming back into fashion, is that I was trying to identify what were the purposes of the product that I was creating. How am I contributing to them? Like, because I'm a shoe designer by profession, and if I design shoes, they buy them. How is that helping them? I mean, okay, maybe it might help them feel more confident, but is that it? Is that really a change that I want to do? Is this confidence they're having contributing to a better world? Are they making changes environmentally? Does a shoe make a difference, you know? And it just made me thought, and I strayed away from fashion to just understand this whole idea of consumption and purposeful design. And finally, I'm going back into fashion now with the idea of how can we create designs that will not only contribute to the environment and the people who are making them and the people who are wearing them. And one of the products that we're making is the healing wardrobe, right? How can clothes benefit our skin? How can it heal diseases? How can it make you feel more productive? How can it shield you from the harmful pollutants and toxins that our world is surrounded in? And just having this purposeful design actually invokes a more encouraging and inspiring way of challenging this situations that we see. And as designers, it is so important to have this purpose. Otherwise, you would go astray and you would start compromising in the decisions that you need to make, whether it be in your supply chain or in the products that you create for your clients just because of profit. So go back to your core value. Make sure that you have a sustainable identity. Who are you and what do you wish to contribute to that world? Because it is who you are that you are bringing in that brand, and that brand will carry it out in the world when people are using that product. What are you teaching them and creating awareness? What sort of messaging are you bringing out to them? And are you sticking true to your messages? It is very important. Greenwashing, you know, it is a problem these days. If you cannot stick to your core values, it's okay, but do not put them out there. Find a way to educate yourself and connect with other change makers to help you reach that goal, but always stick to the values and the promises that you have made for the consumers, for the supply chain, and for a better world. And designers, we are supposed to be creative. So think of how can you subtly and very smartly integrate sustainability into the design in a way that is invisible to most users. Because sometimes the fact is most people won't care. And that is why we are here to make them understand, why do you need to care? How is it affecting not only the world, how is it affecting you and your family and your health and your finances? When they start understanding how much it is impacting them, they would then want to make that change. And that change that they desire to make for themselves unknowingly will start to have that butterfly effect where it starts changing the community and the people and what do they consume on the outside in the supermarkets and the clothes. So without them knowing, they are contributing to a bigger system. But again, designers, hold on to that core, that change can happen. And as you can see today, there's so many people that are encouraged and are inspired to make that difference. Connect with them, learn from them, be humble. I remember reading this quote where it says, being illiterate is not you not having education. It is you not willing to unlearn and learn new things. That is the new way of education now. It can be as a youngster, it can be as my age or even older people. But if you really want to learn, you must unlearn before learning and meet people with the same mindsets that will help you reach that same agenda that we are all hoping and wishing for.
Wow, thank you so much, Yvonne. There was so much in what you said, and so much hope, and so many incredibly creative ideas. I love the idea of the healing wardrobe. I mean, it just shows how when you really question the fundamental purpose, and as you say, go back always to your true values and what you want to contribute, it's amazing how that can spark creativity. And I think that's what is so wonderful about the Earth Charter, that it brings us back to that core question. of what are we doing here as human beings now, and what can we do together. And I've seen in many occasions in different countries the Earth Charter spark, especially, you know, creative people to really create beautiful art, beautiful poetry, beautiful words. And I think, thank you for touching on that. So I'd like to now bring in Olivia. If you could maybe also add, I know maybe you're feeling that you're quite new to the Earth Charter, and as you said, here there are many frameworks now we're being asked to consider, and how do we make sure that all this contributes to action towards creating the transition we're hoping to see? Do you have some comments on that? Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And look, I think with, you know, the Earth Charter, the SDGs, the Millennial Development Goals before that, I think they are all very aligned, and sometimes it's helpful to go back to first principles around what is it that we are wanting to do. And I think, practically speaking, at least from the perspective that I have, which is, you know, drawn from working with organisations and business, there are ways where we need to better incentivize action at this stage. It's not just, you know, there's always the carrot and stick, but it's until people like us who are probably on this call are running our own businesses and companies and probably countries, in the meantime, we're probably going to have a bit more of an incentive framework. And I think the incentive frameworks that I can see that are really quite optimistic and helpful is around directing investment towards, whether it be sustainable linked loans or impact investing. They're still niche, but it would be great to see them be the norm. And I think how we help financiers and organisations take the advantage of that. Flowing on from that is how you measure the impact that you're having. I think that is something we lose sight of, and it goes back, I guess, to my sometimes quite blinding direction around action and wanting to know what happened when we did all this stuff. I think the way to measure and focus on impact, and did you hit the goal you intended, which really should be a benefit outside of yourself. I think it's very difficult. We all know that, but we can't let that stop us from trying and getting closer to looking at those sorts of impact areas. I think the other piece, and it sort of links into the investment side, but also how we measure our progress, is we need to change how we measure and evaluate return. Currently, return and profit are quite synonymous, but we look at it in a financial or an economic dimension. How do we better take a social and environmental lens to that? That may require new ways of measuring it. They exist, but they're probably not mainstream, and the markets don't necessarily reward that en masse. So I think there's angles around that. We need to mainstream knowledge. Again, sustainability folk are in danger of thinking everyone thinks like them. They don't. And so we actually have to take our heads off and go and talk to those who are not in this area. We tend to talk to ourselves a lot. It's helpful if we talk to outside of our knowledge set. So I really do think mainstreaming that. But also I look at sustainability as a jigsaw or a patchwork. I don't need everyone around me to know everything. I just need you to know the bit that you need to do. If you want to know everything, for sure, come on board, but let's not overwhelm the problem. And kind of really start to break down and map tasks or actions across whether it's a value chain or a process or a role or a KPI, you know, those sorts of things, making it really simple. I think, Yvonne, you mentioned around some of the behaviour piece and how do you get people to actually think about things differently. I think making it simple and saying, I just need you to do this bit here. So that means I want us to go with a diverse supplier as the standard, and then you tell me why you're not going to do it, not why you are. And sometimes switching that ask around is quite helpful. I think also the multi-dimension approach, a lot of people think that technology, we're going to tech our way out of this. I don't know that that's going to be, it's a big part of it, but it's not the only part. And I think the way there's the behavioural piece, and fear doesn't necessarily inspire action, tends to inspire other forms of revolt, which are not great. So I do think that understanding digestibility of information is also really important. Yes, technology, yes, behaviour, where, yes, there's market drivers that change. So I think we also need to recognise that in the mix of all of this, there'll be things we just can't do anymore, and how we transition away from that. We haven't really had a lot of, I guess, hard conversations around that can't be here anymore, and this is how we're going to transition. We kind of need to, you know, pop our big girl pants on and have that conversation. The other piece that I think we're missing, and certainly in the role that I'm in and the support I'm giving to Western Sydney University at the moment, universities are absolute hotbeds of amazing knowledge, understanding frameworks, technologies, people, researchers, but I don't think that they're a natural go-to for the business community. The bridges between the two worlds are kind of still a little unformulated in some areas and formulated in others. So I think, how do we better tap into some of that deep expertise and use that to accelerate and unlock what we're trying to do and problem solve together? And there's a lot of work. I had a great conversation this week with somebody, and we said the only way you solve problems is to solve problems. It's kind of obvious, but we actually need to remember what that actually means. And I think we tend to stitch ourselves up in a bit of confusion sometimes. So let's kind of go back to first principles. But there are lots of examples out there, I think, that show it is possible.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think, yeah, we keep coming back to this point about having hope and basing action on that, because it's true that if we become too overwhelmed with knowledge, that can often leave us in a very disempowered and confusing place. I once listened to a talk by Gro Harlem Brundtland at the Foreign Correspondents Club here in Japan, and she was talking about the need to take a systemic approach and integrated approach to issues. And I actually ran after her afterwards, and I said, but what do you do if that leaves you feeling even more confused because you feel everything is connected? Where do I begin? And she said, just take one thing, but approach that one thing in an integrated way, which was a really great response. So now I think I'd like, if I don't think there are any questions as yet in the chat from any of the audience. So maybe while we have about another 15 minutes, so in case people do want to pose questions, please go ahead from now. But perhaps in the meantime, I can come back to Song Lee to see, do you have any reflections on the need for action, how we can take things forward?
Yeah, I think that one thing is that our home, Earth, is the biggest inspirer for us. We got to respect the Earth. We got to respect different forms of life. And we have, as SDGs, we have goals, we have frameworks, but how to make it happen, that will depend to each one of us. What would be, make us to take right actions? Our hearts. So I think that the Earth Charter goes to the heart, goes to the root causes of the current, unsustainable way of life. If we want to change that, change our hearts, get inspiration from the nature, I think that's something we may want to think of. Look at Miriam just mentioned reimagining. And also Yvonne and also Olivia mentioned the creative. Where comes those? Our hearts. So that's why this spirituality is a big inspiration for people to take actions. So I think somehow, for me, to what extent we can disseminate the Earth Charter. That means we disseminate the ethical foundations, let people think, and let people feel, and let people find ways, right ways to do right things. And, also, the current system is based on the, I don't know, it's kind of an industrial civilization, right? And that started, it's already started destroying what we have and what nature offered us. And we got to find out, what's the wrong, what is kind of the barriers, what are the thing which are destroying our thing, and also find out the new ways to do things. So again, the inspiration should come from the Earth Charter. That's why Earth Charter is so instrumental for this sustainability, because that is the guidance that change people's mind, that change our heart, that will lead us to more actions, concrete, and being creative. Thank you.
Have we lost Joan?
Thank you. Am I still here?
Okay, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm having a few technical issues here too. I believe there is a comment in the chat, but I actually can't see the chat at the moment. So if anyone else is able to perhaps bring, oh, hang on, I've just managed to readdress it. So sorry, here we are. I can see the comment. All actions, policies, and investments to address environmental, social, economic, and peace issues do have one thing in common. They all have an impact on the health and well-being of populations, which I think is a very vital point. And I wonder if anyone here would like to comment on that. Is anyone interested to comment on the health and well-being impact? We have, as well as having Kazuo Takahashi here, we also are very fortunate to have Michael Bracken, who is the chair of the Earth Charter International Council. But first, I think Kazuo, you would like to comment. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Jerome. I just would like to support all what our Chinese colleague has said. Her remarks are very, very important, and that coincide largely with what Yvonne said and what Arabia said. And to me, we are in a very important phase of a civilizational situation in the global society. For the first time in history, the first generation of the global civilization, which we have been experiencing for the past few centuries, is in the process already of change into a new second generation of global civilization. Throughout history, civilizational changes have been taking place with a combination of pandemics and wars. And now what we are experiencing is the complex crisis consisting of enormous number of very dangerous environmental damages, wars, and COVID-19 pandemics. And that is also combined with an entrance into the fourth generation of industrial revolution. And we shouldn't have any illusion that what we have been experiencing for the past 2 or 3 centuries will continue as it has been. We are faced with a civilizational change, And in that situation, the only navigational charter we have in the world community for the historical experiences which we are experiencing is the Earth Charter. Let's make it sure that the respect of life should be the core of the new civilization. And as the Earth Charter makes it clear, based on experiences of the humanity for the past more than 3 millenniums, should be to combine ecological integrity, economic and social justice, and democracy and peace. All of these elements are very vulnerable, which we all know. And we have to build up these vulnerable elements or pillars and make it a very clear chart for the human history to proceed into a new civilization. And I think the starting point has to be for us to send out this clear message through the networks of the civil society, not through governments, but networks of the civil society, actors and organizations, that the core value of life, centered around 3 pillars, should be the navigational charter for the civilizational change which we are experiencing. Joanne, thank you.
No, thank you. That was a beautiful expression, really, to bring us back to our starting point once again. And I think the phrase "a navigational charter" is really wonderful, and it totally coincides with the words of our international president, Daisaku Ikeda, who promoted the Earth Charter in many of his peace proposals. And he said it may be considered, the Earth Charter may be considered a guideline for humanity in the 21st century. And I think we keep coming back to this, and the challenge is simply how to, as you say, raise awareness, keep sharing this message, keep promoting the Earth Charter, because there is so much that is unique about the Earth Charter. As we know, there are these other frameworks. We have all the SDGs and the myriad goals and targets, and we have other frameworks that we also use. But what we keep coming back to is this unique nature of the Earth Charter for expressing everything so succinctly and touching our hearts, as we've all been saying, and awakening all levels of our consciousness as human beings with a shared destiny. So at this point, I'm afraid I think the question in the chat didn't quite fully come through. So I would like to, if unless any of the other participants have a last word they'd like to share. Yes.
Sorry, Joan. There's a question there. I can read it if you want.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Success in achieving the intended goals depends on establishing causality, i.e. what Olivia mentioned as did we hit the goals? So how do you establish causality in relation to social impacts?
Causality. I think it means causality.
Yeah, I think that was, thank you, Alicia.
Sorry.
No, thank you. Is that the end of the question, or was there more? Cause and effect.
Cause.
Yeah. Olivia, do you want to come in on that?
Look, I'll have a crack, but I'm sure the others will have a good view on that as well. I think it is very difficult, and we talk about sort of indirect and direct effects. The benefit, if I take carbon emissions, for example, and all of that sort of thing around greenhouse gas emissions, you can measure that quite scientifically. There are numbers, and when we have numbers, it's really nice and neat. And yes, where they come from might be tricky, but we can quantify that. I think the challenge with social, and we have to almost use in some ways proxies. So as an example, if I want to bring in a business from a population that's underrepresented in employment, I may measure the fact that I have now sent, $1 million of contract spend to them. That enables them to employ 5 more people. Those people now have a job. Is that the perfect measurement? Probably not, but that then gives us a way of kind of bringing that in. But it is, I think the point I think that Jordan here is making is that the time and energy it takes to establish those metrics and those I guess causality links can be quite prohibitive for a business that's running at pace. So there's a lot of work in there. And again, it's about bringing that academic thinking into an organisation. But I think there are ways of doing it. It may not be an exact fit, but it's an indicator and directional. And until we have a perfect measurement, we don't want to stop that. I think the other thing that it does add is that, which is the negative side of it, is maybe there are things we're doing that have no impact whatsoever, and we shouldn't probably do them. And it's not necessarily a story people like to talk about, but that's actually the point, is you're meant to know do the things that give you the biggest benefit, and I mean that in the broader sense, and do them more. But to get that, it's not as straightforward an argument. There's a lot of emotion tied into that. There's a lot of other types of lenses that are brought into discussions where you have to stop doing something. So I don't think it's necessarily as one-to-one, but I think it's a really good point to raise, and it's something that we are all, particularly in-house, people are keeping in mind.
Thank you so much. So yes, before I come to Michael Bracken, the chair of the Earth Charter board, I'd like to just ask Yvonne, do you have any last words you'd like to share?
No, I think everyone spoke really well. Everyone touched on businesses, on our attitudes, our behavior. But I think Lee Song said the thing that is really important. It really starts with the heart. Out of the heart, the abundance of the mouth speak. Out of the hearts, the issue of lives comes out. Out of our hearts, we speak wisdom of words, and these words cause learning towards others. It really is, as an individual, making sure that your heart is in the right place before making these moves. Good intention, like Olivia mentioned, a good intention may not come to good outcome. You have to be transparent with yourself. What is the change you wish to bring? How can you start? And like you mentioned, it is a holistic change. Choose one area that you can focus on and work on that. It's as simple as that. It really starts with the smallest thing. And don't lose hope. Like you can see, a lot of us are hopeful about this future. And even though there are many negatives, there are more positives if you just change your perspective on things. And we are all change makers. Yeah, just to let them know, like, don't ever feel that your contribution is small. We are all change makers. That is our purpose here on earth, to take care of this earth. It is given to us. So how can we nourish it for the well-being of the people and the planet? And that is what the Earth Charter stands for.
Thank you. Those are really lovely words. Thank you, Yvonne. So now, I'd like to ask Michael Bracken to come in and give us some final words to take us forward into this future in which we're going to take even more action, and we're going to continue to ensure that the Earth Charter is really there at the heart of all efforts to move forward in our transition to an ecological civilization. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Joan, and welcome everyone. I can't tell you how excited I am today as a result of participating with this incredible forum. Joan, you've done a remarkable job as a facilitator, kept everything really on point. I want to acknowledge Miriam, Yvonne, Olivia, Kazuo, and Song Lee for making this just a rich and enjoyable discussion. And what I really found most compelling about it was that with every single discussion we had today, we stayed very focused on the pillars of the Earth Charter. You know, there weren't a lot of distractions. We ultimately came back to those beautiful pillars and as Cosmo mentioned several times, you know, respect and care for the community of life. I can't think of a more powerful way to wake up in the morning with that outlook. But I really want to thank and acknowledge each of you for sharing your insights and your thoughts and your contributions to this discussion. It was really powerful. And as we know, today is the birthday, or yesterday was the birthday, depending on where you are, the 23rd anniversary of the Earth Charter. Happy birthday, Earth Charter. And if you bear with me for another minute, I'd like to just share a brief birthday commentary for the Earth Charter. And let you know that this is the 23rd anniversary of the Earth Charter, a visionary document that has guided humanity towards a more sustainable and harmonious future since its inception in 2000. Through its profound principles of respect for nature, social justice, and global cooperation, the Earth Charter has inspired individuals, communities, and nations to embrace the urgent need for environmental stewardship and the promotion of peace and equality. As we reflect on the past 2 decades, let us recommit ourselves to the principles of the Earth Charter and work tirelessly towards a world where all beings thrive in harmony with our precious planet. Happy 23rd anniversary Earth Charter, and thank you all again for everything you've contributed today. And if I could, I just would like to share one other observation that I came across within the last 2 weeks, because it really ties in with a lot of discussions from Olivia and Yvonne today. When we start pressing on the whole area of business, capitalism, profits, growth, and how do we change that mindset? And it's not going to be an easy one, but this is just something that helped me. And we talk about raising our level of consciousness, you know, having a different outlook. But for those of you in North America or Europe, you're aware of the fact that over the last really 2 to 3 decades, there's been a flatlining of the middle class, which means the middle class really has started slipping behind those at the very top of the socioeconomic ladder. And it's created a lot of the political unrest that we have in the US and in Europe. But I read this article. It was just fabulous from the perspective, again, a different level of consciousness. The point of the article was, if you look at a more macro level, you know, the whole Earth, the whole planet, and you look at what has happened in just China as an example, where 800 million people have grown from poverty into the middle class. And when you look at it from that global perspective, the world is actually better off from a socioeconomic perspective, irregardless of what might be happening in Europe and in North America. And that's part of the whole respect and care for the whole community of life, not just the northern hemisphere where there are more assets in the southern hemisphere. But that's just one example of, in my opinion, of a different level of consciousness. And it helps me because there's so many questions we need to answer. And I would love to have more discussions with Olivia and Yvonne about what are the metrics we can recreate beyond profit and growth to help be more regenerative and build a better planet, and in some small way move the trajectory off of that one focus that we seem to have. So thank you, Joan, for being kind enough to invite me to the forum. Thank you to all of our speakers. I also want to thank all of our guests. I always notice that not only have we not lost anybody from the beginning, this goes back to you, Joan. So salute, bravo, Joan. We actually have several more people than what we started with. So thank you, Joan. You did a fabulous job. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Song Lee. Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Kazwa. Thank you, Olivia. This was a fabulous get together. And thank you to everybody else. And let's continue to make strides to make the Earth Charter and the fabulous pillars more of our lives, and taking action to make the world a more just, sustainable, peaceful place.
Thank you so much, Michael, for your inspiring words. And yeah, I'd just like to add my thanks to all our speakers today. Olivia, you're very welcome, warmly welcome to our Earth Charter community, and we look forward to having seeing a lot more of you in the future. And thank you, Kazo, for sharing with us about your huge contributions here in Japan and your wonderful new book. Thank you, Song Lee, for jumping in there to give us a beautiful, heartfelt perspective and bringing in the Chinese, very important Chinese aspect as well. And Yvonne, above all, thank you to you for being such a shining example of one of the Earth Charter young leaders. And I hope everyone who's watching today, and thank you so much for spending your time with us, will investigate the training courses, the courses that are offered by the Earth Charter on various issues around sustainability and ethics. And if you're a young person, consider joining this wonderful network of Earth Charter young leaders. And to finish, I'd just again like to pay tribute to Miriam, Amanda, Alicia, and everyone else in Costa Rica who has been steering this ship that is navigating by the light of the Earth Charter. And let's all really commit to maybe just having one more dialogue with somebody who doesn't yet know about the Earth Charter. And just to finish, I'll come to the final quote of the Way Forward section of the Earth Charter as our final words. Let ours be a time remembered for the awakening of a new reverence for life, the firm resolve to achieve sustainability, the quickening of the struggle for justice and peace, and the joyful celebration of life. Thank you so very much, everyone. Thank you. It's been a privilege to be with you all today. Thank you.